Archetypal Polytheism. This is my particular flavor of polytheism. In noticing the similarities of different pantheons, gods, myths, religious practices, and even concepts, I started to look into why. What began to surface was an original pantheon, likely a religion that started with mankind's evolution into sapiency, a source pantheon, predating recorded history that has since evolved and changed into the various gods and religions across the span of the human diaspora. It's far too coincidental to simply write off all the similarities of the gods, myths, and praxis the world over as coincidence. Why does Shango have a similar weapon to Thor? Why do Odin, Veles, and Vilanaz share such striking similarities? What about Skadi, Artemis, and Sekhmet? Was it simple coincidence that a goddess of combat be associated with the bow, as well as Artemis and Sekhmet being associated with healers, and Juxaka, the Sami bowwoman, is involved during the birthing process? See my Skadi video for more. But, as you can see, a clear delineation starts to form. We begin to see patterns, trends in our gods, relative to some central proto-form they must have had. You can take the concept of archetypes in two ways. One, being the more atheistic, purely psychological construct. Two, that the Jinregen, holy powers, exist beyond human practical understandings, and that we filter these archetypes through our hugger, schema, and cultural context, seeing those archetypes as the gods we relate to most. Hence why I focus on the Nordic pantheon while recognizing the source archetypes. First, pantheon. How do we figure out a pantheon without hard evidence and direct sources? Same as anything else. You look at the ancillary evidence. The information you're seeking no longer exists. The solution to the mystery is unknown. So we look for remnants of what that could be, keeping in mind that these are possibilities, not hard facts. Like in my Hell video, I examined underworld goddesses from many cultures all over the world, and noticed they almost universally had connections to a maternal earth goddess, like Persephone in Greek myth, whose mother is Demeter, goddess of harvest, or the Ainu goddess Kamoi Fuji, namesake of Mount Fuji, being their goddess of hearth. So we start to see that Hel isn't just an underworld deity, she's a maternal caretaker of the departed. Threads. In order to discern the archetypal similarities, you must follow the threads. Things like etymology, for example, show us that Zeus and Tyr share an archetype, as the reconstructed Proto-Indo-European origins of their name is Deus Peter, similar to the Vedic Deus Peter, and also a clear precursor to the Roman Jupiter. But then we have to think about Zeus and the thunderbolt. Wouldn't that make him a cognate of Thor? Not exactly. We see similarities in Thor and Heracles, actually. Blunt weapon, hero of the people, shaped the world with his deeds, quick to anger. I go more in depth in my Thor video. You see that the archetypal threads split and merge based on the needs, geography, and overall perception of the worshippers. So Heracles becomes slightly less divine in origin, and Zeus gains the thunder. We can also see this in the perception of the huntress. Skadi chooses her husband and started out seeking vengeance, as is the Norse perception of the sacred feminine in that form, whereas Artemis is chaste and punishes any man for even looking at her. Two different perspectives of the same energy, but Skadi also gains the archetype of winter itself, each god being both individual and unique, as well as connected to their shared archetypes. Cognates. Cognates are gods of similar origins, those that share archetypes. As we've seen, this can mean they split from an older god or simply maintained integrity, but changed name, characteristics, and fit the changes of that culture. It's important to respect the cultures of the gods. The archetype is the bones. The persona on those bones is unique to that culture. It would be ridiculous to say that a different relationship to that god creates a whole new god. You see your mother differently than your father does, she's still the same person. But with deity, Jinregen, the holy powers, the rules aren't set in stone. Odin shares cognate with the Welsh Aron, but they aren't exactly the same god, only stemming from the same source, which I elaborate on in my Odin video. But we can look at Norse Odin and Germanic Woden, or Wodenaz, and the similarities are so striking we can assume they're the same god. However, given more time, they may have become more distinct and thus been separate gods, but also cognates sharing the archetype of the Senex. Conclusion. Now you have a basic understanding of archetypal polytheism. There are 1001 ways to see the gods. Mystic, literal, psychological constructs. Soft polytheism, like Kemetic orthodoxy or Hinduism, believing all gods stem from a demiurgos, as the Orphic mysteries call it. Or hard polytheism, which sees all gods as individuals with agency. Archetypal polytheism is almost in between the two. While a demiurge, like Hindu Brahma, may exist, even as a possible origin of the universe, and all within, archetypal polytheists see the world as connected by much more than what we see at surface level. And the archetypes themselves may be separate from any source demiurge. We just don't know for certain. Humanity is connected by a deep history, sharing gods, archetypes, and spiritual concepts. Land spirits, called Vatir in the Norse, are something we all recognize. Most cultures also recognized the importance of giving offerings to the departed, another thing I came across in the Hell video. Or the spirit animal associated with the placenta as it follows you from birth. The Norse call it Fylgja, the Aztecs called it Nawali. And despite being on separate continents, with no known interaction, they share this concept. It always baffles me when I see folkish misunderstand archetypes, or use Proto-Indo-European reconstruction to justify their worldview. Archetypes show us the gods don't belong to a single demographic. Archetypal polytheism allows us to understand that we're not as disjointed as we've been taught by pop culture and revisionist history. The Source Pantheon predates Proto-Indo-European cultures. The Indo portion refers to India, the Vedic, and now Hindu religions. So we see the connection between India and Europe. We also see the connections between Chinese Lei Gong, who's not far off from many indigenous North American Thunderbird myths, but also shares characteristics with Thor and the Japanese Raijin and Susanoo. As you can see, the archetypal threads show an interconnected world, a web connecting all human history, spirituality, and understanding of what is beyond us. Leading me to wonder, are we just filtering the same spiritual knowledge through our corporeal think meat? Has the integrity of these gods and concepts been kept due to a biological factor? Like our hardware and even software being so similar we maintain certain concepts? Or is it beyond us, our souls floating in a cosmic punch bowl, the aether of existence, unable to feel or comprehend the spirit realms, so we use our physical minds to reach out and only grasp a distorted image of the same realm, filtered and coded by culture, geography, and bias? We may never know. And, to be honest, it's not important to have exact, specific knowledge of the spiritual, be it external force or psychological construct. The important thing is that we wonder. The important thing is discussing philosophy and contemplating our existence. The destination matters less than the journey. The path you walk will teach you far more wisdom than knowing without challenge. Nothing is an absolute reality. All is permissible. Score!